부탁드리겠습니다. 그리고 책상 위에는 여러분들 통역기가 하나씩 준비가 되어 있는데요. 1번이 한국어, 2번이 영어입니다. 채널 설정을 잘 해주시면 감사드리겠습니다. 11시부터 본격적으로 기조 강연을 이어가도록 하겠습니다. 잠시 후에 뵙겠습니다. 여러분 다시 한번 안내 말씀을 드리겠습니다. 잠시 후 11시부터 여러분들께서 기다리시는 기조 강연이 진행되겠는데요. 파라마운트 픽처스의 세계적인 미래학자 테드 슐러위츠가 준비 중입니다. 아직 행사장 밖에 계신 분들은 안쪽으로 들어오셔서 가급적이면 앞쪽부터 자리를 채워주시면 감사드리겠습니다. 오늘 원활한 행사 진행을 위해서 가지고 계신 휴대전화는 잠시 꺼주시거나 무음 모드로 전환을 부탁드리겠습니다. 통역을 위해서 책상 위에는 리시버가 준비되어 있는데요. 1번인 한국어, 2번이 영어가 되겠습니다. 네, 여러분 오래 기다려주셨습니다. 가급적이면 앞쪽부터 자리를 채워주시면 감사를 드리겠습니다. 지금부터 개막 행사의 메인 순서인 기조 강연을 시작하도록 하겠는데요. 기조 강연은 파라마운트 픽처스의 세계적인 미래학자 테드 슐로위츠가 준비하고 있습니다. 디지털 영화 카메라 전문 제작사인 레드 디지털 시네마의 핵심 제품을 개발했고요. 20세기 폭스에서 시각적 스토리텔링을 예술과 과학, 기술적으로 발전시켜온 기술 전문가이자 미래학자입니다. 그럼 테드 슐로위츠를 무대 위로 모시겠습니다. 큰 박수를 부탁드리겠습니다.
안녕하세요. Good morning. Yeah, that's all I got in Korean. I'm very happy to be here in Korea today. This is part of a trip to this part of the world. I was just in Japan for a few days and now in Korea. Before we get started, I want to just say a couple of things before we officially start the talk. That I'm thrilled to be in South Korea. I've been here many times before. I've had quite an interesting life with technology here. And I would think that out of all the places in the world I've visited, and I've visited many places in the world, I would say that Korea and the Korean people probably embrace innovation and new things and new challenges better than any other culture I've ever seen. So I admire your challenge and your risk and your desire to see what's new. 감사합니다. I also, Chuck, will you stand up? I also want to thank my good friend Chuck, who asked me to come here from the United States. He's a very, very good friend. And we've been through many technology journeys together, and this is just the most current one. And I'm very proud of him. He won the Venice Film Festival for his work in VR, which he's going to talk about in a little while. Okay, shall we get started? Okay, so here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like everybody to stand up for me because we're going to do a small experiment. Some of you have seen my talks, you know. Please stand up. Now, I presume everyone here has a smartphone, right? In Korea, it would be hard to imagine that none of you have a smartphone, right? So everyone, if you have a smartphone, take it out and show me nice and high. We're going to try a small experiment, a small what I call futurist experiment. I'm going to explain what I do for a living. I work for a large movie studio. So everybody has one, right? This is not just a smartphone. This is actually your own personal pocket robot. So I'm going to ask you to indulge me in a small experiment. I've never done this in Korea before, and I'm curious with the translation how it goes. But if you wouldn't mind, take your smartphone and hand it to your neighbor. So check, you can do me and I can do you if you want. Come on up here. And you can maybe swap with the photographer. So he's going to take mine. I'm going to take his. Now take your, everybody swapped? Everybody change? Take your new phone, put it in your pocket. Now have a seat. Everybody sit. How's everyone feeling? A little nervous? A little concerned? That we've removed more than just a piece of technology from you, correct? We've removed part of your humanity. This is way more than just technology today. This does everything for us, and it's with us constantly. So that's how we're going to start our presentation. The trick, the goal here, is to see how long you can hold out without your cell phone, with someone else's cell phone, okay? Nervous? See how it goes. So today what we're going to talk about is the augmented and virtualized human, the fact that our human bodies have been augmented with technology. Technology is no longer just a piece of the story, it is the story of our current human form, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So try and imagine, some of you maybe can imagine this better than others, that you ended up in prison tonight, in jail. Possible, right? Maybe not for most, but for some. Now, if you didn't have your phone, if you had someone else's phone, in the United States, they take your phone away when they take you to jail. So who would you call if you didn't have your phone? Maybe you know one or two phone numbers, your parents' phone number. But your robot, your smartphone, knows everyone else's phone number, right? Think about the last time you drove anywhere without using navigation, even places you know how to go to. You ask your robot, your second brain, to tell you where to go. That's why this is so critical. It's way more than just technology. It's now part of how we think. We allow technology to let us think. So I like this quote a lot. Even if you're on the right track, you will get run over if you just sit there. Who here agrees with that? Everybody agree with that, I would presume. Because in this culture, in Korean culture, you don't just sit there. You run, you try new things, you try experiments, you take the risks. Because even if you know that something is going to change, if you don't participate in the change, you will not be part of the story. Someone else will be the story. So the idea of what you do culturally as to how you make change is very important and very thoughtful, and I would say continue it strongly. Now these are some statistics that I like to mention and I like to bring up in a presentation. People check their smartphones 150 times per day. If you lose your wallet, if you lost this, it takes you in the US, and I presume here in Korea as well, about 1 day to report that you lost it. If you lost your smartphone, it takes you a little over an hour to get very, very nervous and report that you lost it. 1 day, 1 hour, right? This is where the important information is now. It also, this is a very interesting one, this statistic down at the bottom. We touch our devices almost 2,700 times per day. So think about that. This thing that you have in your hand, you touch it almost 2,700 times every single day. Interesting, right? Okay, I want you to watch this. This is from an experiment in New York City. It's a little video. We need sound louder, yeah.
If you're going to be texting and walking, I'm a seeing eye person, I can help you walk and text.
Excuse me, I see you're texting. I can clear a path for you.
If you'd like to walk and text, we're here for you. Excuse me, sir. If you're going to be texting and walking, you grab both? Good. So you're barely paying attention.
Excuse me, pardon me, texter walking. Texter coming through.
Interesting. Imagine here in Korea, everybody's walking like this. Walking, walking, walking. This is part of what I want you to think about, because in a little while in my talk, we're going to talk about the change from this up to here. Because there's something about to change. And it's going to have a massive economic impact. Okay, I want to talk about 2 US companies. Do you know these companies? Everybody knows them, right? I'm going to talk about what I call a cautionary tale. And this is something valuable to think about. So if we look at Blockbuster, which we all probably remember fondly, in 2004, their revenues were $6 billion. They were quite fine as a company. 2 years later, they only slipped a little bit to 5.6. By 2008, they were $5 billion company in revenue. By 2009, they slipped to $4 billion in revenue. And you might think, that's fine, right? You're still a large company making $4 billion in revenue. But it turns out, when you go from making $6 billion in revenue, you're making a healthy profit. With all the infrastructure you've built, when you drop and you lose $2 billion in revenue in 1 year, you are now losing a lot of money. So within 1 year's time, from 2009 to 2010, Blockbuster goes bankrupt. Why? Because of this company. An online company that didn't start out online. They started out by shipping physical media, physical DVDs in the mail. But they had the foresight not to call it Mailflix. They called it Netflix because they knew that at some point in the future, the net would catch up. And at the same time Blockbuster was slipping away from the humanity, from people's desire, human behavior desire, Netflix was climbing. In 2004, they were a $500 million company. 2006, they were almost $1 billion company. By 2008 to 2009, they started getting right around $2 billion, right when Blockbuster was making $4 billion. But their costs were much lower. Their profits were much, much higher. By 2010, Blockbuster's done, and Netflix is a $2 billion company. 10 years later, $12 billion company. And now in 2018, They're valued at $150 billion. You know how much Blockbuster is valued at today? $0. Something to think about as you discover and think about change. And some of the things you were saying this morning, that your chairman was saying this morning about the concerns about VR as a growth industry, that it may not be coming as quickly as we've anticipated, and the dollars aren't there yet. Don't worry about it. Worry about change. Worry about how things are going to happen when humans change their behavior a little bit. So this is a valuable thing to think about. Want to see another one? This is United States retail. You know some of these companies, yes? This is a 10-year journey. In 2006, this is the money that these companies were making. You want to see what happens 10 years later? You're curious? 10 years. 2006, 2016. 10 years later. So the only one that's still putting up a fight in the United States is really Walmart. Everyone else is pretty much given in. Sears is done, they're bankrupt. JCPenney almost bankrupt. The others are holding on to a little bit of market share. And here's tiny little Amazon that started with nothing. 10 years later, $500 million company. You know what happened 2 years after that, right? $1 trillion from one single entity. That's change, right? That's using technology to create change and understand change. Now this is interesting because there's more to these stories. And this is a very good article about why these companies actually failed. These are interesting things to put into presentation because it makes everybody start thinking, right? But actually there's much deeper story about the fact that executives at Blockbuster were telling their board, we're really worried about Netflix. And the board was like, we're fine. We're a $5 billion company. Don't worry about Netflix. They're a little internet startup. So if you want to read more, that's the article to read. Now, these are companies from my part of the world that I would argue are some of the most influential companies on planet Earth today. But they didn't start out as gigantic multi-billion, multi-trillion dollar companies. They started out in a garage, very humble, right? The Microsoft guys, the Apple guys, literally started out trying to solve a problem with no money and just really, really interesting idea, something they wanted to achieve. And they literally started in the garage. In the entertainment world, Walt Disney, that's Walt Disney's garage in the back of his mom's house, literally started Walt Disney right there. I would presume that the story of Samsung and Lotte and others have a similar beginnings to this, yes? They didn't start out as thinking about there were going to be these giant businesses that were going to run the world. They just wanted to solve a problem. They wanted to create something, right? Now there's a TV show in the United States, I don't know if you get it here, but there's a TV show in the United States called Silicon Valley. Does anybody watch Silicon Valley on HBO? Some of you? This is a scene from Silicon Valley which I like. It's a comedy show. And there's sound for this. You have to have sound for this. Let me go back. Ready? Make it loud? Yeah.
Birthplace of Hooli. Peter Gregory's mother's garage. That was Peter's workstation. This was mine. Things sure have changed. But in a way, they've stayed exactly the same. As we forge our new path together, we must remain focused on what's really important. Not material success or wealth, but this, the spirit of innovation. A few coders, some ramen, and a dream. And that is why I brought you here. All right, let me show you the rest of the place.
Oh. You got a garage inside your garage. Impressive.
So the point of this video, which I think is very funny, is that the inspiration of ideas is not about what you get. The inspiration of ideas is about the wonder and creation of ideas. And this is just the byproduct of what you get, right? We think it's interesting. We think it's interesting culturally in the United States. When I meet with young companies, with startup companies, I actually ask them, How often do they eat ramen? Not the expensive ramen that you get in the Korean restaurant, or the Chinese restaurant, but the 6 for $1 ramen, the college ramen, right? Top ramen. Because my goal is to see, are they focusing on the right things? If they've raised some capital to build a business, are they putting that money where it matters? Not in fancy furniture and fancy food and a fancy clothes and a fancy office, but into the idea that they want to build. And I think some of the people you had up this morning, I noticed a lot of young kids coming from education, right? That's very valuable because they're thinking like kids. They're not thinking like business people yet. That's where real change happens. Okay. So in English that says, tell me a story. Chuck, how would you translate tell me a story in Korean? Tell me a story. It's the most important thing we do as humans. So my talk here is actually not about technology. It's about story. It's about the ideas that drive us as humans and the technology that takes us there, right? So when I think about story, and I work for a large movie studio, which we're going to talk about in a minute, I think about the stories of risk and reward. That is my story, that is many of your stories. How do we take risks and the rewards that come from them? So what I'm talking about now, that was Act 1 of my little talk. Now this is what we call Act 2, because we're now in story land, story structure, Act 2, okay? Risks in storytelling, risks. And the technology that many of you are spending time in that plays into this equation. Now, who here likes risk? I like risk. Who profits from it? This is a question we ask. Who feels good in the risk zone? Who feels comfortable? Who feels like this is good for them? Everyone has different comfort. Most shy away from risk. Most people you meet every day do not encourage risk, do not like it. It doesn't feel good to them. Korean culture really likes risk. It is actually part of your culture. You're growing up with it when you're a little kid. It's different than other places, which is why there's so much innovation in Korea. But of course, there are consequences to risk, right? We all understand that. So we ask a simple question. If you take a risk, what's the worst that could happen? What is the most terrible thing that could happen if you take a risk? Would you like to see? This is the most terrible thing. You could die. That is the actual thing that in our brains we think about. If I try this, I might actually die. If I jump off the mountain, if I jump out of the airplane, if I climb and take the risk, part of my brain, even though I know I probably won't, is thinking I could die. But what's the best that can happen, right? If we know the worst is you could die, the best is you get a private jet. Not really. The worst you could die, the best is you do really interesting, good things for people. You do good for yourself, you do good for your family, you do good for the world. You create change. And if you do well, you get a jet. Now, risk is exposure, right? It exposes our flaws and our strengths and our weaknesses. I work for a motion picture studio, Paramount Pictures, a movie studio, right, in the United States. And movie studios either thrive, create success, or wither, die, based on the risks, the chances they take, and if they pay off or not. That is the business equation of a motion picture studio, or a television studio, or a gaming studio, anything. So I used to work for this big studio, which you know, 20th Century Fox, and now I work for this big studio, Paramount Pictures. Neither of these are what we would call startups. They have been around for a very, very, very long time. 83 years as 20th Century Fox. Now this company is migrating into Disney, into the Disney part of the world, right? Paramount Pictures is the oldest of all of them, over 100 years. And my job at the movie studio is to ask a very, very simple question. Can these companies actually act like a startup? Do you know what I say when I say startup? A starting company, beginning something. Is it even possible? That's what my job is to figure out. So I have a very interesting job. Now I want to recommend a book to you. Does anybody know this book? Did it travel to Korea yet? Let me see, by show of hands, put your hands if you know it. Some people are shaking. This is a really interesting and valuable book to read for all of us that do storytelling and technology and art and creativity. Because, and I'll bring up some of these quotes. I know they'll have to be translated, so I'm sure the translator is working very hard now to read these. These are some of the quotes that I think are really interesting in this book, but I'm going to tell you what I think is the most valuable part of this book. There are many things about this book that are super valuable. I recommend everyone should read it. But there is one thing that this book has discovered and puts good clarity around that humans do and no other animal on the planet Earth can do. Humans can tell stories. We can create fiction. We create ideas and we put them into practice. Everything about this right now is not real. If it was actually real, we'd be outside in the grass looking for food. This building is fiction. It was created by somebody. The fact that we're all sitting here quite comfortably listening to me talk is a shared story, a shared fiction that we believe as humans makes sense to us. Therefore, we don't fight with each other. We sit here comfortably in our chairs. If we didn't understand the story, we would not be able to do this. This is critical to how humans succeed and have become the race that essentially rules the planet Earth, and are so dangerous because when the stories go wrong, we can potentially destroy the planet that we live on. So if you like this kind of stuff, and I love this kind of stuff, I recommend you read this book. And I'm glad some of you have read it. Who here knows this company? Who here loves this company? I love this company. Now keep in mind, I don't work for this company. I work for a different movie studio. My bosses might be very unhappy that I'm talking about Pixar now. But that's okay, because this is important to me and I think it should be important to you. So these are 3 great things that you should check out about Pixar. A documentary called The Pixar Story, a book called To Infinity and Beyond, and a very, very important book called Creativity, Inc. If you work in this industry, in a creative industry, doing creative things, and you haven't read this book, you are missing out. This is one of the key books about understanding how to nurture creativity, how to create the kind of positive, safe, working, and creative environments where ideas can thrive. And I believe Pixar represents this better than any modern studio entity, because every one of their films is really successful. Even the ones that are the least successful are still successful, more successful than most movies, because they understand story. This is not a technology company. Even though everybody thinks, oh, well, Pixar is technology, right? They understand technology. Steve Jobs helped create it. George Lucas helped create it. Pixar, technology, no. This is a story, an inspiration, and creativity company that puts technology where it belongs. Technology belongs in what we call second place. Story is in first place. Technology is just happy to play a part in the equation. When it's approached correctly, you can have massive success. And that's why I love Pixar. I think Pixar is a great study for anybody that works in our business today. Okay, that's Act 2. That now sets the stage for some technology that we're going to talk about. So I'm going to give you a little background about me, because very often in a conference like this, people ask questions about, in the question and answer part of the discussion, that I'm a futurist. That's my job. It's a very strange job title for a movie, for someone who works in the movie business. So I'm going to tell you why. Does everybody know where this is? Florida. That's where I grew up. In a little area called Orlando, Florida. Now, this gets a big laugh when I talk about it in the US. I'm curious if you will laugh too. I refer to this part of the United States as the funnel of crazy. Give the translator a chance to chances. Because crazy things happen in Florida in the United States. It's not like the rest of the United States. The rest of the United States does crazy things, and when it gets crazy enough, it has to find its way to the bottom, to Florida. Is there a place in Korea like that? Is there kind of an extra crazy spot? Maybe Seoul, right? So I grew up here. And as a little kid, as a little young boy, 7 years old, this was my life in Florida. It was not a very forward-thinking place. It was agricultural. They grew oranges. That was the first year when I moved to Florida. I was a little boy. Second year, 1 year living into Florida, this happened. And as a young boy, I grew up in a place that relished, loved, and understood change and wanted to explore new ideas all the time to entertain people, to let people have fun. I literally grew up as a little boy in the world of the future, where this was not worried about, this was important. We were going to try new things and see if audiences would respond to new ideas. We were going to try and shape the future. And that's what happened. Now, a friend of mine who gives presentations like this said, you know, after a while, when you live life long enough and you do some things that people think are interesting, what you do when you give presentations is you just play your greatest hits. You tell the things that you did that people think might be interesting. But really what's interesting is today's story, not yesterday's story, but this has relevance, so I'm going to talk a little bit about it. So, early in my career, I worked in the television business. I worked for entities like Walt Disney World and Nickelodeon. And I did mostly children's television, so part of the ideas of my life were always about youth culture, about understanding young people and what young people wanted to do and why they were different than old people. And I still feel like, for the most part today, I'm one of those kids. I never really grew up. My body got older, my hair got grayer, but I just stayed like a little kid. You can ask my daughter, who's here somewhere, she'll tell you. I'm the biggest kid in the family. Then later in life, after I was done with about 20 years of doing television production, I got involved in the technology business of storytelling. But story was always the most important thing to me. Not technology, kind of like Pixar, which is why I bring it up. That's how Chuck and I first met, through this technology that I helped create, a movie camera that became very popular all around the world, including here in Korea. I went on to do stuff before that. I did a lot of work with Apple, creating this thing we now refer to as desktop video. It was much harder back 25 years ago than it is today when it's on your phone. But this was the beginnings of desktop video. So I started these companies and helped kind of move them along, which was a very fun period of my life. Then when I retired from all this, I got asked to move into the motion picture world, to work at movie studios. But I want to tell you a little story. This is similar to the Blockbuster story and similar to the Netflix story, but this is a story about Kodak. Who here still remembers Kodak? Right? The yellow boxes in the film. Does anybody know what that is? That's the first digital movie camera ever created. The first digital picture camera. It was created in the 70s by an engineer who worked at Kodak. And this is the underlying technology. Kodak did indeed create a camera that was the beginnings of the digital revolution, but it didn't catch on. They were not the innovators. They had the core technology to innovate, but they didn't actually create the thing that worked for customers. These companies took the technology that Kodak had and built successful businesses on the backs of Kodak. Kodak should have owned all of this, but they couldn't think and act like a startup because they knew how to do what they did before, which is sell film cameras and film for motion pictures and personal use. They couldn't adapt to the new, even though they built it. They built the technology. So they did make billions of dollars from the patents on these. The patents ran out in about 2007. 3 or 4 years later, Kodak declared bankruptcy. 100+ years. And these companies did okay, but now these companies are all struggling too because of this. Oh, this is the story. If you want to get a little more info on this story, this is a good story to read about how the man behind the first digital camera was asked to just put off to the side and not worry about it. That change wasn't going to be that much of a concern for Kodak. But this is what everybody's worried about now, the next phase, right? We all do this with our mobile phones, with our smartphones. But is there something after that? So these are interesting things we study and we think about. Okay, that was Act 3. Now we're going to Act 4. Now we're going into the future. That was the past. So part of my study as a futurist, as someone who experiments and thinks things, is I think about the technology we use to tell these stories. And I think about how much has changed versus how much has really not changed. So these are TVs from when I was a kid, when my grandparents were a kid, when my great-grandparents were a kid, right? This is 100 years of television. Here's today's television. Now, while it's evolved, if we think about this screen and these screens, they're more the same than different, correct? They're the same formulation. They're a box with a border. These are screens. These are all screens on the side here. A lot of you have screens in your hands. They all are sort of the same thing. They're this thing we call television. We do television for everything, right? Yes, we've changed it, made it lighter, made it brighter, made it higher resolution. Now, consumer televisions. I was just at the Lotte Mall last night at the Adventure Center because I went to check out the VR stuff, and I went to the consumer electronics area, and now they have 8K TVs for sale. Consumer 8K TVs. 4K is like old school now. You can get 8K TV. But the thing is that 100 years ago to today, we're still trapped inside this rectangle, this border, this thing that limits the visual experience. Now, the thing I think about is in this 2018, 2019, 2020 timeframe, are we getting ready for the first real massive formulation change in the visual experience that we all do every day? That's what we're going to talk about next. So here's another version of those screens, right? They're actually more the same than different. Believe it or not, they're kind of the same size, except we've made them much thinner. We've made them much lighter. But the screen itself is kind of the same. This was quite a big deal, right? And if you haven't swapped your phone back yet, I'm sure you couldn't handle it, right? Do you need your phone back, John? You can swap your phones back now that we're talking about it. How did it feel to take your break for a little while and not look at your texts, right? So now you put your own phone back in. When we transformed the screen into something we could hold and move around with us, that became quite a big deal. And it took many, many years to get it right. But now it's so right that we keep it with us all the time. We look at it from the minute we wake up to the minute we go to bed. It's a portable television. That's all it is. It just happens to do every single thing in our lives. Check our email, look at our tests, watch YouTube videos. You name it, our portable pocket television does it all, right? But it still has a border. It's still restricted space. So when you make the little pocket television, new forms of entertainment spring up that generate billions and billions of dollars. And we as an entertainment company pay attention to this. We think about these things. We pay attention, right? We're also very interested in this area we call interactive storytelling. You probably refer to it as gaming. But I talk about the story elements of gaming, so I call it interactive storytelling. And yes, video games tell stories, and anybody that tells you they don't is incorrect. The best video games tell stories, in addition to their mechanics, their physics. So why are we so interested? Well, there's the bottom line of the money, the actual dollars, right? Grand Theft Auto 5, just one video game of the series, is the most successful economic piece of entertainment of all time to date. That one video game cost a lot of money to make, 270 million US dollars, has now, it's actually eclipsed 6, it's about $7 billion in profit. There's no movie that makes that kind of money, trust me. One game. Call of Duty franchise is over 10 billion, the Madden franchise over 4 billion. Fortnite is a force to be reckoned with, as we say. It's now multi-billions of dollars. So we pay attention to this stuff. Uh-oh. There we go. Okay. But still all trapped in the screen. 30 years ago to today. Yes, it's much smaller. Yes, it's much lighter. But really, functionally, if you take the Apple screen from an iPhone and lay it on top of an Apple SE from 30 years ago, it's kind of about the same size and kind of does the same things, just more evolved. So the reason I put the question mark here is because there's something big getting ready to happen, and you guys all know what it is. That's why you came to this conference. That's why you're involved in this business. You're not involved because of the small little moments. You're involved because you know that this is about to change, and this is going to be not just billions of dollars in commerce, it's going to be trillions of dollars in commerce. Just like the formulation from here to here became trillions of dollars in commerce. So, I ask a question. Are we ready to break out of the rectangle? Are we ready to stop being aware of the border? I believe we are, and now we're going into Act 4, okay? The next step of our visual experience as humans. So it's a very simple thing. People ask all the time, people challenge me all the time. They're like, well, we get it, but we don't think that that kind of change is going to happen. Like, are we really going to wear this stuff on our eyes? My belief is we will. And it's happening right now. Because we do a modified version of that all the time now. If you think about it, this is why we're going to wear it. This is why we're going to wear it. These were pictures I took in China over the summer. I actually took some more pictures on the subway last night. I just didn't have time to put them in the presentation. It looks just like this in Korea. Everybody in public transit is like this. No one's looking at each other. No one's looking out into the world. They're all looking like this. Look at this kid. You think he's going to have some neck problems and body problems? He's buried in this device. We call it a phone, but it's not a phone at all. It's a visual device. This is a picture I took in China of an advertisement. It's a famous soccer player for a new cell phone brand. But what are they telling you here? They're telling you this is not a phone. They should actually have a big logo that says, this is not a phone. You're holding it up to your eye. It's a visual device. It's a little mini television that we use much more for visual than non-visual things. So the clues are there. Things are starting to happen. We use a visual device that started out as something we held to our ear like this, and we've moved it over here to our front of our face. So you start to think about where would it go next once we get the technology to a place where it makes more sense to wear it than to just hold it. That's what I get to think about all the time. So it leads us to this thing we call virtual reality, which all of us in this world are in, right? This business of virtual reality. This is not a new business. For those of you that think it's new and it's just started, for some of the kids that are in college and think they're on to something new, they are not. It has been around for a very, very long time. If you look here, VR World, 1995, VR goes mass market. Well, clearly that didn't happen for lots of reasons. The question is, in 2018, is VR ready to go mass market? What do you think I think about that? I think the answer is no. It is not ready to go mass market, and you need to be prepared. As people working in this industry, we have many, many steps to go before you are ready to reap the rewards of the time that you're putting in. So you need to be prepared for the winter. The cold winter of the fact that this is not ready for prime time yet, for lots of reasons. So we're going to learn about that. So I'm going to talk about these sort of waves in my personal life of where I touch VR, okay? So this one's really interesting. This is from the mid-90s, and this was extremely important, this particular piece of entertainment. This is from an indoor theme park in Walt Disney World in the 90s, something everybody knows this term LBE, right? Location-based entertainment. Location-based entertainment was attempted many, many years ago. In fact, theme parks, by their nature, are location-based entertainment. We go to a location. And people started to say, what if we could use technology in a different way than having to build these large physical contraptions to entertain people? This was the beginning of that. This has sound. Oh, ready? Yep.
Hello, I'm Michael Eisner. I'm here in the virtual reality studio where Disney Imagineers are creating a whole new world of storytelling. Tiny TV screens inside this headset actually allow you to step into the world of Aladdin on a magic carpet ride. It's called virtual because it's a world which only exists inside a computer. Reality because unlike film or television, you see not just what's on the screen, but what's above, around, and behind you. And you control when you return to the real world. I wonder where the exit is. Oh well, welcome to the wonderful world of Disney.
So that was location-based virtual reality 25 years ago. The headset cost $500,000 US per headset. The computer it required to run it cost $1 million per computer. But this is what it looked like in the theme park. It was a little mini indoor theme park. and you put this giant thing on your face, weighed 14 pounds, but it was miraculous. And I did it as a kid, and I still remember it. It still occupies this place in my brain that is different than any movie or television show I've ever seen, because it was spatial entertainment. It actually felt real to me. And that's the magic of virtual reality. Today's version is actually not all that much different from 25 years ago. The computers are cheaper, the headsets are lighter, but they kind of look like this. And if you had a chance, has anybody been to the Latte VR adventure area? Some of you. You should go. I went last night. It's fun. There are not a lot of people going yet. We're still not getting people there yet. But we're learning. We're learning what's important about this. So companies are investing in it. Okay. This was the second part of my journey in VR. This now goes about 5 years ago. This is my son when he was 15. I'm going to play this. So Matthew, can you hear me?
Yeah.
What do you think about this experience? And this was a very young company.
I like it a lot.
Did you look up in the sky yet? That you can see the sky?
Hold on.
Okay. He's busy killing zombies.
Sky's cool.
So this is all hacked together, right? You can bring the sound down if you want. Early technology. This company became a company called Survios, which you may have heard. They make a game called Raw Data. They make a boxing game called Creed. This was at the very beginnings of their life. They took the Oculus DK1 and migrated it together with a PlayStation Move Ball and some other hacked together stuff. But this is real hacker stuff, right? And they became a big company because of this. And this was a big deal. So that was my past. That was 5 years ago. When my son wore that and took the headset off and looked at me, he said, "Dad," I said, "What?" "I'm never playing my Xbox again." And the headset went right back on. And that's when I knew there was going to be something to this. But I also knew it was going to take some time. But I felt it in my gut, and that's when I got into it. So now we're in what I call the current wave, 1.0 of the current. This started around 2015, so you can sort of figure 2015 is the start for all of this. These are the numbers. 6 million units shipped in about 2016, a little more in 2017, 8 million, 13 million in 2018. We'll see what 2019 has to bring. There are some interesting things that may get it into the 20 to 25 million units sold. This would not be considered a massive consumer electronics hit yet, because these things are not ready to be a hit yet. They have too much friction. But they are completely magical because we have removed the border, right? We have made a new kind of screen, a magical screen that allows us to start to believe that there is no screen. That is a really, really, really big deal. But they all have a problem. They have a very, very, very singular problem. Stands for, I call it BOF. So what that stands for is box on face. All of these devices are a box you wear on your face. That is why they will not be massively successful in any of their formulation, no matter how good they get. This formulation is not the hit formulation of these devices. This is a step in time. It's wearing a box on your face. It's why we don't do it all the time. For 2 years, when I was at 20th Century Fox, pursuing this type of work, I put boxes on people's faces. And I taught them that there was going to be a future to this. Many of these are quite famous people, actually. There's my daughter who's here with me in Korea. She's here somewhere. Looking at the dog is the clear indication of why the problem, because the dog's like, "What are you wearing on your face?" So I did this for a long time, and I loved it. But I also knew that this is just the beginning of the road. This is not the end of this road. This is the next step, right? 1.1, as we would say. There's some very important things about this. Who has something called the Oculus Go? Who has one? So everyone here, if you're in a VR conference, you should have an Oculus Go. The first reason is it's under $200 US. It's very inexpensive. Now, it is not the most sophisticated headset. It's what's called a 3 degree of freedom headset. You look around, you don't move around, but it's still remarkable. It's great, it's lightweight, I take it with me all the time, I play it all the time, I like it. If you want to learn what's going to happen in the future, you need to own one of these. There's still boxes on faces, but they're getting more evolved. They're getting better. Who here played the Wii? Come on. I know you all played the Wii. Everybody played the Wii, right? The Wii was really, really important, and the Wii, as a gaming device, is very underrated for how critical what it created is. So the Wii did way more than gaming. The Wii created spatial entertainment in your home. It was not just a video game. You could let grandma bowl in the living room. You could play tennis in the living room, and it felt like you were playing tennis. This is the beginnings of virtual reality at a mass scale. Even though it was still the rectangle, it was still the box in front of the house. The reason why we know this is virtual reality is because at the beginnings when they released this, they didn't put a safety strap on the little controller. People would get so into it that they would forget, and they would throw the controller into the TV and break the TV. So they eventually had to put a safety strap on it. Clear indication that this is way more than just a video game. Your brain is telling you it's real, but still restricted to a TV, right, to the box. Now I want to show you something really interesting. Now we're 20 years later, right? But really, not much has changed from the Wii. We've just evolved the Wii, and we've taken the box away, and we've made this magical version of the Wii where everything can feel a little more real. So you see this thing that's happening here, right? They're using their hands and their body, spatial entertainment. Now let's look at the Wii. It's the same stuff. You're literally doing the same thing, right? Spatial entertainment for the home. That's why this is going to be a big deal. Because we know the Wii was a success. So this device, the Oculus Quest, is coming out. Look at the marketing video, the current marketing video compared to 20 years ago. It's the same video. It's the same stuff. Why is this important? Why is this a really, really big deal? Because we can do what we call a 6 degree of freedom headset, actually moving around inside the technology for under $400 US. I imagine every one of you will own one of these, and a lot of your friends and family will own one of these. Even though it's still a box on your face, right? It's a box, we cover up our face. This is going to be a big deal. You want to pay attention to this. This is coming out in the springtime. So March, April, May. Probably May, you're going to see them wide distributed. A lot of people are going to buy these. Start thinking about building content for these. It's not as powerful as the one you connect to the PC, but it has other superpowers. It has other things that are insanely valuable about this device. So you want to learn, and if you're in the VR world, you want to get on their developer program, and you want to get this early, and you want to learn its capabilities and its strengths. Okay, final act, Act 5. Now we've talked about VR. We've talked about the importance of VR. We've talked about the weaknesses of VR. There's something else that's coming that's going to be way more powerful than virtual reality, because it's going to encompass virtual reality and also bring you more things. It's called augmented reality. And there's a version of augmented reality we call mixed reality, which I'm going to show you in a minute. So the important part of this, the important understanding about this, is that we already do this as humans. We augment everything. We're on our phones looking at me, and you're texting, and you're doing things simultaneously. We mix a digital world and the real world all the time. Koreans probably do it better than any culture I've ever seen. You are so comfortable mixing the digital world and the real world. That is part of why you have made so much money in the digital revolution, because your comfort is there. You're not afraid of this. If you watch any sport, these are American sports, of course, and you have Korean sports. If you watch any sport today, we do a digital layer on top of the sport. We call it augmentation. We're watching it on a normal TV, right? But the next thing is coming. Something beyond the BOF, the box on the face. This is still not right, but this is more right than the box on the face. Because it starts to look a little bit more like sunglasses, like something you would actually wear, right? Some of these you would never wear for long. But some of these you start to get a sense, maybe. That's a very famous basketball player in the US, Shaquille O'Neal. He's wearing something we're going to talk about in a minute, right? That's the Prime Minister of Canada, who I'm a big fan of. Some interesting things happening here. Because eventually it's going to look like this. It's going to look like your glasses. A lot of us wear glasses. I wear glasses. We're already there. We've already put the thing on our ears. We're comfortable hanging it on our ears. We're just waiting for the capabilities to move from this, which makes sense, to this without this on it. And I'm going to show you where I think that's going. Now I want to show you something else. So this is from the Oculus Developer Conference from about 3 years ago now. That's Mark Zuckerberg, the head of Facebook. He went on stage and said this type of form factor is actually the future of VR and AR. Now here's a guy who's got billions of dollars invested into the box on the face. Probably arguing about $4 billion now, committed to the box on the face as the staging event. But here he is on stage a few years ago saying, actually all that stuff I'm doing isn't right, and I'm putting billions of dollars into it. This is more right. This is where it's headed. And they have a whole division working on this right now. This is a version of what we call mixed reality. So we do this with our phones today, kind of magic window, little kind of captured inside a little screen like this. But imagine when you wear that visual and you can't tell where the screen starts or ends. This is a concept video from a small company in Santa Monica. And this is a shopping area near the beach in California. And you can start to see overlaying digital assets, right? Now we do this in a very, very expensive way now with large physical screens. If you just go outside this conference center, you'll see screens that are hundreds and hundreds of meters long that cost many, many millions of dollars to install. But imagine a day, not so far in the future, when those sort of screens don't have to cost millions of dollars and everyone can have their own personal version of their advertising, marketing, entertainment world because we're wearing it. That's what's coming. This is a much, much bigger opportunity than just the virtual reality box stuff. So if you're doing virtual reality as a business, you want to start to pay attention to mixed reality. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Okay, so now we'll last like 5-10 minutes of the talk. Is that okay? Everybody good on time? Yeah? Everybody says okay. Okay. So what I'm going to tell you now has nothing to do with what I know or don't know about Apple. I'm a big fan of Apple. I've worked for Apple for a long time in various capacities and engineering groups and things working alongside them. What I'm telling you now, to be very clear, this is not what I know or don't know about Apple. This is just from what I call the rumors, okay? But these are important things to think about because when Apple does something, they tend to do something very correctly. So here's what I think about a lot. I think about the watch. I don't wear the watch because I have the phone right here. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But what does make sense to me is the fact that they've packed so much compute power and so much screen into a tiny, tiny little device that you could wear on your hand. It's a little 1x1 inch box. It's almost as powerful as your smartphone. It has a completely usable interface. It's kind of remarkable, actually, this device. But it's kind of in the wrong form factor. Just imagine, this is not me telling you anything I know or don't know, this is just me thinking about it. Just imagine if you could take what's in that little box and spread it out on a little more surface area around your face. There'll be no weight. It'll be a completely usable operating system, and it'll feel like your glasses. Because that little box, we can spread the form factor out, and we can wear it. It probably won't look like that. That's from the internet. But when Apple does it, it'll probably be amazingly correct. Because they spend a lot of time watching others make mistakes, and then they go to work, and they try and figure out what do humans want. And then others start to learn. And that's when you start to build a new business. And that's happened many times. Okay, as we wrap up, who's seen this? Who knows this little moment? We've all seen that, right? If we're tracking this business. This is from this crazy company and only would happen in Florida, right? Florida, United States is where all the crazy things happen. This is a company called Magic Leap. I'm actually really, really fascinated and amazed by what this company is doing. Even though the things you read in the press sound like they're not quite doing what you think they're doing, what they're doing really is quite amazing. They're bending light and creating a device that's fairly comfortable, even though this is a developer device, this is not a consumer product yet. What this does is showing us the future. Absolutely. So this was a concept video they did a few years back. And everybody made fun of this because a big VFX company, Weta, company that does all the Lord of the Rings VFX and The Hobbit, made this along with Magic Leap. And all the people that saw this on the internet said, well, that's fine, but that's fake. Like a computer-generated image, you could easily do that. And I was one of the people that very early on was spending time in Florida with this group 5 years ago. And I saw the beginnings of this, and I kept telling people, no, that's the fake version, but trust me, this is real. What they're doing is actually this. And they're still working on it, and it's still coming. So now I'm going to show you a couple videos to wrap up. This was from their developer conference. Now they've shipped their first developer product, right? It's called the Magic Leap 1. And this, play the audio nice and loud for this. This is an amazing little moment. Make the audio nice and loud.
So there's a table here. It's not, oh, it is really here. That's an interesting meta thing that I like. They thought the table was actually part of the mixed reality. The table is real, but everything that's on it is not. So that in that itself is pretty nuts. I wasn't paying attention to what I was supposed to do.
Do you guys get that? Do you get how powerful that is? So here's a guy, me, who's been working with these devices in various forms for many, many years. Saw a product. This was done by friends in New Zealand. They wanted to film me. So I said, yeah, film me and I'll do some commentary. And when I was in the room, I lost track of what was real and what wasn't real. Even though the visuals of the real and the not real are not equal yet, the fact that it actually understands where objects should be in space, there's a bunch of digital objects on that table, and I couldn't remember if the table was actually there or not. So when I reached through it, I assumed the table was part of the entertainment, and I put my hand on the table and went, uh-oh, table's real, but all that fun stuff on it is not real. That was a huge, huge thing for me. It was a very clear indicator that something is happening here. This is something really important. It's going to happen and develop over the next 10 years. So now, if you'll indulge me, I have a little video I'm going to show you. It's about 4 minutes long. You're going to get a little visit into my living room in California. So you're going to see me playing with this device. Anybody here have a Magic Leap? I'm curious if some of you, just a few of you. Okay. If you can get one, it's not super cheap. It's about $2,300 US. But if you want to start to experiment with the future of what we call mixed reality, putting things, artificial things into the real world and seeing what kind of entertainment comes from it, I recommend as a company or as a person, this is a very good investment to make. I'll show you why. So now you're just going to get a little video tour of what happens with me playing in the world of Magic Leap. And this has audio. Ready? Here we go. And I don't know if you want to bring the lights down, but you can. I guess it's fine.
All right, get ready. You rolling? Hi, everybody. It is the day after Halloween on 2018, and I'm wearing a Magic Leap 1 developer headset, which mounts to a small little microcomputer that sits in your pocket, and I'm going to play in my living room. This is my living room in California, in Los Angeles. I'm going to play a game called Dr. G that Weta created that actually allows sort of a adventure, story-driven video game to literally take place in your living room. So now what I'm doing is actually scanning my living room. And now I'm looking around the room with the device.
Good work. Look at your walls, floor, and furniture to scan it. You should see the scan start to cover your room.
And it's scanning as we speak. And now it's asking me to find buttons to help the scan, which I'm doing. So it's actually scanning the world. There's another button somewhere over here it wants me to touch, or way over there, okay?
Great. We have what we need.
All right, it's got the scan, and now I'm pushing this button to start the game. Oh, I didn't push it all the way through. There we go. All right. Now the game's getting ready to start. Stand by. Okay, it's loading up. So what's pretty remarkable about this is that there's this robot creature that's floating in my field of view, and it actually looks real to me. Like it is sitting there in my living room, and the smoke trails that are coming out of it are realistic. Like it actually looks like it's a real thing, which is pretty amazing. And now it's kind of opened up its little navigation world. So I pull out this thing, put it in there, and it's going to open up a briefing card. Now, I've played this game already for a couple of hours a few nights ago, so I'm on mission 7. Didn't quite get in there. There. Put it in. There we go. Okay. Now there's my mission card. I'm pulling it out. I'm looking at the mission card. It's kind of floating in front of me. And now I'm putting it in the little holder. And there it goes. Okay, and now I'm getting ready to start the mission. Just push it with my hand. And now I'm getting ready to fight robots in my living room. Here we go. Sure you're ready to fight robots in the living room? Here we go. Uh-oh. Okay, so now the action starts. So now, in front of my little home theater screen, I have like a portal, and now I've got to shoot this robot dude. And they're all over the place. They're literally coming out of the walls. And I'm firing stuff, and I'm kind of trying to blow them up as fast as I can. And it's super fun. So a couple nights ago, as I was reflecting on this, I was thinking how, like, the journey of someone my age in mid-50s has lived through interactive entertainment, starting with Pong, then on to Space Invaders. Oh, I gotta pick something up. There we go. You literally pick something up with your hand like this. On to Space Invaders, then on to Pac-Man and Galaga, and eventually Mario, into Grand Theft Auto, into, I gotta keep killing stuff or I'm gonna die, into Red Dead Redemption and the Uncharted series. And now I'm literally playing a game in my living room where robots are literally climbing out of the walls, climbing from beyond the couch. Like, stuff is literally happening in my world. And that's what's so remarkable about this. And I just died because I was doing the video instead of paying attention to playing the game. So I'll do another run of the game and show you a little more game fun in a moment. So that's what this device does.
Who's interested in that? You want to do that, yeah? It's super fun. It's amazing. And we're just getting started. But this, to me, is the real formulation. It's got the tenets of the Wii. It's got all the joy of VR. You're still in the real world. You understand where you are in the real world. And when they get this right, this is a really big opportunity for those that want to play early in it. So that's my talk. If you liked what I had to say and you were curious, you said, oh, I'd like to remember some of the things he said. When I was giving a talk in Silicon Valley, they drew a cartoon of me giving the talk. So if you want to take a picture of that, you can kind of remember, oh, those are all the things he talked about and why it's important. That's the whole last hour in like a cartoon. So you got that. And we got the picture? Okay. And lastly, this is in my wallet. You can see it. It's in my wallet. With time, the impossible will become the possible. I got it in a Chinese restaurant in New York City late at night. Words to live by. It's in my wallet. This is what I think about every day. Nothing in our world that we create from an entertainment, socialization, productivity, help for the world, have a good time in the world is impossible. It's all completely possible with time. And we're starting to see more and more clues of what's coming. So get ready. I have no doubt Korea will be a big part of this equation. I know that some of my friends with some very large companies, one of the largest companies in the world, starts with an S, is deeply involved in mixed reality. They haven't talked about anything publicly, they haven't released anything publicly, but they are 100% doing things in mixed reality, and what they're doing is going to be remarkable. Just like the way that Apple and that Samsung company do things and create the world that we live in today, they're creating the next world we're getting ready to live in. So, thank you all. It was a wonderful morning. It was fun to spend time with you, and I look forward to the day.
네, 여러분 큰 박수 부탁드리겠습니다. 테드 실로위치였습니다. 고맙습니다. 땡큐. 과거부터 지금까지의